Morning, Matt. Good morning. It is Tuesday, November 16th, 9 o'clock, Franklin County Commissioner Board meeting. We have all three commissioners present. We have the Administrator, Keith Johnson, the Clerk of the Board. And at this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask you to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes September 23rd and November 2nd. Is there any corrections, additions?
No, I have none.
Okay. And next we'll move down to office business, vouchers.
We have two. Move for approval of fund expenditures in the total amount of $632,655.81 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by two representatives of the Auditor's Office and the County Administrator.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Move for approval of salary clearing payroll and emergency management payroll in the total amount of $977,028.34 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by two representatives of the Auditor's Office.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Moves us down to consent agenda. I believe there's two items.
Move for approval of consent agenda items 1 through 2 with discussion on 1 and 2.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. I'd like to amend the motion and pull item 1 for separate discussion and vote. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So with that, consent agenda item number 2, discussion.
Mr.
Mike?
Mahoney,
Go ahead. Go ahead. No.
Mr. Mahoney, I see you're here this morning. Went out and looked at this site. The school district owns the land, right? This being deeded?
That is correct, yes.
And it's for a public use roadway. And there was a reference, if I remember from a week ago when I read this, that they were doing it in part for liability reasons, but there was a reference to development on that side of the road, which would be the west side of Road 108. Do we anticipate that development's going to be a school or a school and housing, or do we know yet?
Right now, we just know about the school, and our reference in there is that they still will bear the responsibility for their side of any development that goes on from their property, like curb, gutter, sidewalk, whatever.
Okay, that's how I understood it. I just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
That's correct.
I guess my only question was, is there an existing road there now?
No, there is not.
So it's blocked off, so there's no access to it?
They just had a review. Evidently, they're going through a major review of all of their properties, and they wanted to take care of this. There was some question from their people about the land they're not using and the potential liability that they still would have attached to that if something should happen. So that's why they wanted to go ahead, and this is kind of what you would call doing a part of the process prior to when it would normally happen, but it still suits the same purpose. This provides for a future road and all that. So there is potential for more development, both school and housing, and all of that would be developed at the same time.
But there's not an existing trail there where somebody would be driving through and create more liability.
I believe there is. Are you familiar? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, this is a board discussion. If we can move on. We don't do this as a habit, and I don't want to establish the habit. We know where the property is. We've got all the information we need.
Yeah, I mean,
We have Mr. Mahoney.
I believe that that was their concern, is that people could and probably are driving down that area, yes,
That would be my concern.
yes.
So, Mr. Mahoney, you have asked Mr. Baumann to speak.
Well, it's
No,
not,
he did
I'm
not.
sorry, it's not my place. I saw somebody behind me stand up, I looked, I know he's incredibly familiar, but that's absolutely not my place, that's the board's place. I apologize for stepping out of place.
Well, as chairman, I see Mr. Baumann is a developer. I'm going to give Mr. Baumann permission to speak on this topic because he sounds like he has information to give before we make a decision. So please, Mr. Baumann.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, let's just
Yes.
know for the record that the next time we have this situation and someone that I want to speak to it, I'm going to call them up. and
Are you
it'll
the
be without
chairman?
objection.
Are you the
It's
chairman?
irrelevant. Chairman has no extra authority beyond
I run
these
the
two
meeting,
commissioners.
Mr. Peck.
You do
The
not have
chairman
any additional
runs the
authority.
meeting.
Get that through your head. I'm just
Mr.
saying
Peck,
for the record
Mr.
that when I
Peck,
want to
Mr.
call
Peck.
somebody up in this circumstance, I'm going to do it.
Order. Mr. Baumann, please.
Thank you. I can speak directly to this. I approached the Pasco School District about this issue, and as the developer on the opposite side of the road of the school district, we approached the school district, which is normal, to ask for an easement or dedication of this specific piece of right-of-way. If they were to give an easement, it would later then be dedicated. So in this instance, they chose to dedicate it in one process versus do a easement and then a dedication later. And it also, my understanding, relieves them of some responsibility in liability by doing it in one process instead of two. As a developer, I'm required to develop 2/3 of the road if I'm developing prior to the opposite side, and this was the way that the school district felt was the most advantageous for them to do it. Thanks.
Thank you for
Mr.
that
Chairman, point of
clarity.
order.
Point of order, Mr. Peck.
You've just called somebody up who has, one, spoken for the school district, and you can review the recording, and you'll see that that's a fact. Two, he's given or implied legal counsel for the board. Three, he's injected information that wasn't in the read-ahead materials. I want to be on the record that this is not a good practice, and when we have further situations or topics that come before, you've just created a precedent where any board member, reminding you that all three commissioners have equal authority. You may run the schedule, but you don't have any more authority than anybody else. We'll have now the privilege to do that, and
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Now,
thank you.
Mr. Mahoney, would you please come forward? Were you aware of everything that he just stated?
No, the only thing I'm aware of is the communication that we have directly with the school, and we have.
Were you aware of the fact that the school is doing this as a process to help themselves work through this? What he pointed out, the clarity that he gave us, you weren't aware of it?
No, because my communication with the school was our communication from our office was completely different. They approached us from their angle. I have no knowledge of, we see land, we know there's potential for development, but we have no idea of the conversations that they're having with developers, or why they came to us. They had what we considered to be compelling reasons from the school district standpoint to do this, to go through this process, and that's how we move forward, was basically with just, well, not basically, but wholly with the information that we had with the school district alone, so.
Well, as a board member of this Franklin County Commission, before I vote on anything, I want to get as much information as possible so I can make a correct decision. Commissioner Mullen, did that information help you in this decision?
Yes, it did.
Thank you.
Mr.
Commissioner
Mahoney, can
Peck,
you vouch
did
for
this-
the accuracy of the information
Commissioner Peck,
provided?
I have the floor. I am speaking. Did this help you in your decision process?
No, I had all the information I needed previous, and since
had that
since
information.
I now have the floor, I said I had all the information I needed to make a decision. Now, you have to understand, I hope you understand,
Oh, I
that you've got
understand.
someone who has stood up and spoken for the school district without them being there. Mr. Mahoney, can you vouch for the accuracy of the information provided to the board that they're basing their decisions on? Because they've just said it helped them make a decision. So this is information that's been entered into the record and for discussion. It's helped them make up their minds. Can you vouch for the accuracy of that information?
No, all I can vouch for is the communications that we had directly with the school district,
Right.
between our office and.
So
the
you're
school
making
district.
decisions predicated in part by information on the school district's intent that didn't come from the school district, that was provided by a third party that's got a fiduciary interest in the construction. That's a problem. Thank you. Let's move on.
Okay, so I say we pull this item from a vote and we make sure that we have the right information. If you're questioning Mr. Bauman's accuracy or honesty, I want to make sure it's accurate and honest. So I'd hope you'd want to do the same thing. Let's pull it, and next week we'll make a decision on it.
I have already said, the record provided all the information that a reasonable person...
You said there was new information today that he put out there, that he's speaking for the school. I do not want to vote on this until I know that is accurate, because you have questioned it.
No.
Yes, you have.
What I have said is that all the information I needed in response to your question to make a decision is in the county record. I did not rely on Mr. Bauman's information. You two gentlemen are the ones who said you relied on it, and I'm merely saying the record doesn't require that additional information.
So I move-
It is clear that he did say what the school district intended. He was speaking for the school district, intentionally or otherwise. He does have an interest in the development out there. We don't provide that privilege to other people. So let's vote on the information
Nope.
that's in the package. It's more than adequate, or we can hold it till next week. I don't really care.
I move we hold this till next week. Is there a second?
Commissioners, is there a way that I might comment?
And who were we speaking to?
This is Kurt Schaefer with Tippett Company, real estate services firm representing the school district is on standby for additional comments.
Yes, please, go ahead.
We represent the Pasco School District and have for many years, and we assisted them in the purchase of this property many years ago.
Mr. Schaefer, would you tell us in what capacity you represent them? Are you their attorney?
No, sir, I am not. We are a real estate services firm, we provide brokerage services, and we work in conjunction with their legal counsel in assisting them on these matters.
So they're your client and they pay you?
Yes, sir. And we've been asked to attend this meeting on their behalf.
You have been asked to attend this meeting on the Pasco School District's behalf.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
go
I'm
ahead.
satisfied with that.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to share a little history on this. So the school district purchased this property many years ago from the previous owner, and as a part of that purchase, there were portions of the property, the original parcel, that were carved out and retained by the seller. And in discussions with Franklin County, the previous planner, as a condition of the sale, there was an easement recorded on the property along what would potentially be the west half of a future Road 108. And at that time, it was determined at some point down the line, private development, this easement would actually be dedicated as a half a road right-of-way. And the school district has just held that matter until such time the neighboring property was to be developed, and that is our intention, and that's been our communication with the county as far as this process.
Okay, thank you. More clarity to the situation. Commissioner Mullen? You have anything to add?
No, I'm satisfied.
You're satisfied? So we have a motion and a second to approve consent item number 2. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, consent item number 1, pulled for separate discussion and a vote. The structural engineer for door opening in assessor's office. As I look through this, I see an incredible amount of money of $15,000 to shore up this opening that's been sawed through a 12-inch wall. And deal with concrete and steel all day long. I'm no engineer, but when I went in and looked at it, when it was opened, and with the rebar that was in the concrete, I am pretty well assured that that wall is secure in its standing. And I don't know why we're going to this expense to go back in and put angle iron, or not angle iron, but I-beam in a doorway and drill through the existing concrete, which will weaken it, and adhere steel to it. So I'm asking for clarity on this, and I see where Jennifer is in the room. Would you please come forward to speak to us on this? So Jennifer, just a few questions. Who proposed or who brought this up?
During the initial construction, Mr. Pack had spoken to Keith Johnson about doing an engineer assessment.
Okay.
Which they were called in probably a week after the construction started. While they had the door open or the doorway cut and the sheetrock pulled back, they had taken, CKJT had taken measurements, photographs, and then gotten back to the engineer who's located in Seattle. During the entire time that we had done the construction and pretty much framed in the wall and everything, they'd come back probably 4 or 5 times to do more measurements and take more pictures. At the end of the construction that we've done so far, we still have not put in the door. They suggested to us, probably about a month ago, they suggested to us that we finally got the drawings and suggested that we put in the I-beam located on both sides of the door frame and bolted together. The issue is not the size of the door frame. The issue is that it is so close to another door on the other side of the wall, which is now the Human Resources Department. That is the main issue, not because the door was cut into the wall or because of the size of it or anything else. It's just the location. It's a very serious suggestion. It is a suggestion. It wasn't saying that we had to do it. They were just precautionary to support the vault above the 2 offices.
Okay, question. The I-beam is going to be bolted to the exterior of the wall.
They're going to be bolted on both sides, so it's 2 I-beams bolted together on 2 sides.
So instead of an I-beam, are you talking about a piece of channel iron?
It would be a C, I think it's like a C35 channel iron
Yeah,
that they
it's channel
consider.
iron. Because the I-beam does not sound feasible.
I'm sorry for my
Channel iron. So
misspoken.
they're going to bolt channel iron onto that wall on both sides. They're going to drill through, put a bolt through and a nut on the other side and clamp
Correct.
channel iron.
Correct.
And they said that this was not a necessary, but they said it would be advisable.
It would be advisable, yes. That is the quote that was taken from CKJT, from the engineer.
So I think we should get a second opinion because we're talking about a lot of money. And I honestly don't think it needs it. I went and looked at it. The thickness of the wall is how thick?
It's probably about 12 to 14 inches, and
Yeah.
it goes all the way down to the
And that piece
crawl
of
space underneath.
concrete that still exists between the now HR department and the
And
assessors.
that's about 2 feet
It's
difference.
about 2 feet wide? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, is there any other questions for Jennifer while she's up here?
I guess my question is why was the construction completed while there was still an engineering process going on?
We're not completed. The only thing that they did was really put sheetrock on a door frame. The sheetrock is the only thing that has to be cut back, other than the electrical will have to be moved. The door was put in place where it is because we didn't have to move electrical or anything else and kind of save more money that way, not thinking that we would have to actually move it because of the I-beams. So it's not really, we didn't really lose any money because they put the door frame in. It's more the sheetrock and the electrical that'll have to be moved because of the I-beam. So it's not, we didn't complete the project and nothing else has been done since the engineering has given us their advice.
And this is partially based on the fact that there's a vault above it?
Correct. There is
They're worried
there's,
about the weight of the vault?
correct.
Is the vault
Correct.
being used?
There are people in there with file cabinets and so forth, yes. It's an office space.
But I guess my question is, are you concerned about the weight of the vault?
I will not advise one way or another on this. It's not my place.
I think we should get a second opinion on it.
So, Jennifer, you recall my questioning whether or not we'd done our homework on cutting this door?
I don't recall. I know that I had gotten a numerous advice from CKJT, had said, how far does it, when I asked them, how far does it go down? It went all the way down. The construction company was asked, is this something that's going to be okay? Everybody kind of put in there.
Yeah, let me be a little more focused. You recall that I questioned whether or not we ought to be cutting a door through there before they cut the door.
I don't recall.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I did. One, it is a National Historic Register property, so it's due some extra consideration for that, and we can get into National Historic Preservation Act and all those things if people really want to, but I don't think it's worth the time. It is clearly a load-bearing wall, and like Commissioner Didier, I am not an engineer. We've got engineers who have advised us that probably be a good idea to do it. I don't have a problem with getting a second opinion on the engineering, but I do want to make clear for the record that questions were asked by me about the wisdom of cutting through what appeared to be, to a layperson, obviously a load-bearing wall under the rotunda or the auditor's office, and it seemed like it'd be good to get an engineer to look at that before we cut it. As has been noted, it might have been possible simply to move the door a few feet and have what might have been. The engineers will decide, I know there's electrical, but you can move electrical.
There's also HVAC.
And I understand all that, but it may have been possible, and an engineer is probably where you'd look for those answers. So that's really all I have to say, and if the board wishes to get a second opinion on the engineering, I'm certainly not opposed to that. Thank you.
Would those pictures be available to a second opinion that they took? You have
yes,
those in
that's
your
no problem.
possession?
Yes,
Okay.
that's no problem, and then they can come in and measure as the other engineers did, so,
As long as it's from a licensed professional engineer, I'm fine.
okay.
All righty. Thank you, Jennifer. So with that, Keith, we will talk about a second opinion and get somebody else to come and look at it before we spend almost $16,000 in expenses to a 14-inch thick rebar enforced wall. All right, with that, we'll move down to Commissioner Administrator updates. Keith?
Yes, thank you. Quite a bit of activity in my office regarding the 2022 budget. Trying to been going through that since our public budget hearings, and we're scheduled to make a presentation next week at the board meeting for kind of preliminary approval. Let board members ask any final questions. It means I'm going to need to probably spend a little time with each of you individually in the next week. And then we would anticipate on the 30th of November adopting the budget. That puts us in line with the state requirements of having it adopted before the first Monday in December. Allows the assessor's office time to get the tax information out and completed timely before the end of the year. Working also on some audit responses with the state auditor's office. There's some information that they've asked for to support our CARES Act funding program from last year that we're pulling together. Also spending quite a bit of time on a professional services contract between Benton County Emergency Services, BIPIN, and a consultant to provide us some guidance and strategic planning with respect to the upgrade of the CAD system at the CCOM Dispatch Center. So those are the main things I'm focused on at the moment. I will note for the board that I am planning on attending the Wasatch County Leaders Conference. Begins today in Spokane, runs through Thursday night, and I plan on attending meetings with my counterparts Wednesday morning, as well as participating in that County Leaders Conference.
Thank you. Commissioner Peck?
Just finished 2 weeks of uneventful jury duty, and would just remind that we're still encumbering the time of many, many citizens by calling juries when we have few, if any, trials scheduled. That's not something that the board has direct purview over, but I want to continue to highlight that for the courts and others. Columbia Basin Development League Board of Trustees meeting this week. Talked about pending legislation, the infrastructure bills in D.C., efforts by our congressional delegation to get language changed to make funds out of that infrastructure bill eligible for the Columbia Basin project. Mixed results there, some success, but not as good as people had hoped. Shoreline reconveyance meeting with the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, as well as all the local jurisdictions, talking about shoreline reconveyance and continuing to refine potential agreements in that regard. Also, like Mr. Johnson, reviewing the budget and looking at, in particular, capital requests. That
Commissioner Mullen?
So I attended the Pasco Chamber of Commerce. The guest speaker was James Sexton from GMS Construction, and he spoke on the development of the Osprey Point. It's quite a development that's going to be going in and should be starting soon. It's going to consist of over 850 condos. There'll be 100 units for age 55 and older. They're also planning on putting an 8-acre amphitheater in, and to give some reference, the amphitheater at the Gorge is 6 acres. This project is estimated at creating over 900 full-time and part-time jobs and be 7 to 10 years to complete. Also, I want to note that open enrollment for county employees' health care ends this Friday, so if you haven't gotten that taken care of yet, it needs to be addressed before Friday. And also, I will be attending the Wasatch County Leaders Conference in Spokane through Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mullen. Attended the Port of Pasco TIF meeting. I didn't attend that till last week. Very interesting there. We'll be going over that in the future. Redistricting meeting last night in East Pasco was very, I guess, surprising. We were scheduled to have it all in Spanish, and everybody there could speak English, so we didn't have to go to Spanish. But it was an interesting meeting, and I look forward to working with the redistricting committee. And last, I'd like to report that Gloria Bryce, the GM for Ben Franklin Transit, is retiring. Her performance review was getting close to being done. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but we have an opportunity here now with new board members and maybe a chance to reclaim that 1/10 of 1% for mental health, especially when I think maybe part of the reason why she's leaving is because the $450 million they wanted to, or $450,000 they wanted to spend on rebranding Ben Franklin Transit and rewrapping the buses. Seems like a waste of money. So with that, we might have an opportunity there. There's new board members coming on board from Benton County, and I think we might have an opportunity there to get Ben Franklin Transit more efficient and effective in their operations. So with that, we'll move down to public comment. Anybody in the room for public comment? Keith, anybody on the phone?
I do have one caller on the phone.
Absolutely.
Good morning, Ms. Hatch.
Yes, it is.
Please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Sure, thank you. Yes, I am Luan Hatch, Franklin County. I was just calling because of something that I learned that I was quite disturbed about. We heard a couple weeks ago Commissioner Peck had stated that he had COVID and that's why he had missed 2 weeks. So prior to that, we had been at a redistricting meeting, I think in a nighttime commissioner meeting. Actually, it wasn't a redistricting, it was a nighttime commissioner meeting in which Commissioner Peck was there. And I learned actually that at that meeting he was sick and stated that he had the flu. This is very disturbing to me because as we know, face masks are not effective. Yet I also learned that that Commissioner Peck also turned Commissioner Didier in to the State Health Board for not wearing a face mask. This is danger of face masks. We know that Commissioner Didier is not sick because we can see his voice isn't raspy, he doesn't have a stuffy nose, he's not pink around the gills. You can tell when someone is sick when they're not wearing a face mask. When they are, they're able to expose other people without other people knowing. And I just find it rather hypocritical, but also dangerous. Now, whether Commissioner Peck at that time had the flu or whether it was COVID the week before he realized he had COVID, I cannot say, but the flu is just as dangerous as COVID, and it's very inconsiderate. When I'm sick, I stay home. I believe everyone should stay home when they are sick. That's the best way to stop the spread, is staying out of public and away from others when you are not feeling well, whether you know you have the COVID or not. So I just wanted to put all of that on the record. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment?
George Dockstutter, 4951 Self Landing Road. I've got several comments. One, I'm glad she's leaving the Transit Authority. But if the board members cannot get a reduction in the tax, I would like to see the Franklin County Commissioners, who all agree it needs to be not necessarily reduced, but refocused, to join with Benton County Commissioners. Let's get this thing on a ballot. And all this garbage that I can't vote on it, or anybody else out in the county or Benton County can't vote on it, where does all the sales tax come from? We should have the right to vote on it too. I understand we're not in there, but I would like to see the county commissioners get behind and let's get the issue on the ballot and explain to people we want to use that money for mental health, the by-county deal over it. If KGH works out, great. I think that would be ideal. Another thing that came up since we've been here is why in the hell are we using Seattle engineers? We don't have engineers around here anywhere. I think it's ridiculous that we have to go out of town for an expert from afar that probably has no more brains than anybody else here in town. And then as far as the budget coming up at the next meeting, I would like to see the budget meetings be held at night at HAPO, where other people get the opportunity to come in and speak. I know it's an inconvenience for city staff, but they could sure as heck take comp time. Let's hold the meetings where the public can have their say and get a way to do it. And in fact, I'd like to see every other meeting held at night so you can get public input onto what's going on. And another item that's on my mind is what are we doing about the salary commission? I understand it's been disbanded and nothing's being done about it. So you guys just gonna give yourself another pay raise? That's what we wanna know out where I live. And then, I'd like to know what's been decided, or if anything's been decided yet on the CARES money, the whatever it is, umpteen million we've got sitting there.
You want to answer that, Keith?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, we have received a number of proposals, and we're still receiving those. The U.S. Treasury has not yet adopted a final rule, but that's not necessarily going to stop us from making decisions about how we're going to use those funds. Just this week, the federal government, President Biden signed into the law the infrastructure bill that we've kind of been anticipating to see how that's going to affect Franklin County. Obviously, infrastructure is a very important piece of the puzzle for us. We still don't know yet exactly how that's going to affect Franklin County, but it does weigh into our decisions on how we would want to utilize those Recovery Act funds. But
Well, we put charging stations up in Basin City and Mesa.
Yeah.
That's what we need. And I think that pretty much covers what's on my mind right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Thank you, Commissioners. I certainly did not intend to cause hate and discontent when I shared some background, and I absolutely did not intend to speak on anybody else's behalf. My intention and my hope was to provide some clarity on the process. That was my intention. And to be attacked for that, I'm sorry that you were attacked for that, Chairman, and I'm sorry that I was attacked for that. I think night commissioners meetings are very helpful and a very positive thing for our community. It gives the community an opportunity to not have to miss a normal time in their workday to attend those, and I think that's very helpful and positive, and would encourage you to do that. Interesting observation I made, and agree that the jury duty thing that Commissioner Peck has pointed out a number of times is, I think that's something that certainly should be looked at. But the interesting observation that I made was that is not the Commissioner's purview to make that decision. And so the observation that I made and the correlation is, we recently had here in the Commissioner's chambers, you guys brought and passed a statement that was not your purview to ban income taxes in our county. That was not your purview. We understood that, we knew that, but we wanted to make a statement of we don't encourage or we don't accept income tax ban, or we don't accept an income tax. And while we acknowledged that at the time, that it was not in your purview, we wanted to make a statement. And so while that wasn't a part of your purview, you chose to make that statement. And I would encourage you to look into and figure out if there's a way to not make this unduly burdensome on your constituents as far as the jury's duty thing is, which is also not your purview. And so, interesting observation that I made there, and think that you should look into that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Anybody else on the phone, Keith?
no.
Is there anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on down to new employee position, Office for Public Defense, Resolution 2021-264. Mr. Larry Ziegler, would you please come forward?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did all of you have a chance to read the ASR?
Yes, I did.
I tried to make it as comprehensive as I could in the space that was provided. We've talked about this issue before about independent contractors versus employees. I don't think there's any realistic financial way the county could completely transition financially to a full-time employee for the lawyers that work for the county in the Office of Public Defense. It's just too much money. The only way it could be done is incrementally. And Keith and I have talked about this over the course of the last couple of years. And the reason that I'm here today is because fortuitously, this situation arose where one of my felony defenders, who is extremely competent, used to be a prosecutor, does a great job for the office and obviously for the county as well, has been offered a job with the Northwest Justice Project at a cut in pay. She's taking, or talked to me about taking the job strictly because of the benefits. At which point in time I took it upon myself to ask her, if I could get you benefits, would you consider staying? Because if she goes, we're just gonna be right up against the coverage problem again. And staffing this office is getting harder and harder and harder. And as I've told the board before, it's not just a question of money, it's the nature of the work. I know that at least one law school now is actually telling its people, its students, don't go into prosecution and don't go into criminal defense. Where that comes from, I really don't know. I'm not going to comment on that today. The bottom line is, in my estimation, we need to keep this person on the payroll because we need the coverage with the caseload and the backlog. This is not the time to cut somebody. And when I say cut, in other words, I just don't think it's time to acquiesce and let somebody go for the sake of money. The figure that I gave you, that's our number. I had a note today from Ms. Nave in HR. She said she was satisfied with the number. She said that we told her that that number would also include the $2,500 IT expense. We do have the advantage, if we go with this today, she has a commercial lease on her office, which is good through March. So we'd have 90 days to figure out where we could put her, where we could set her up. And at this point, as I stand here today, the only real question I have would be to transition on malpractice insurance. That's something we'd have to deal with. As you know, each lawyer now provides $1 million in coverage out of their own pocket. We make her an employee, the county's going to be on the hook for that. My guess would be a premium on that would probably be $1,100 to $1,500 for a year's worth of coverage. But I haven't had the opportunity to talk to Jennifer Johnson about that yet. But for today's purposes, we just need to make a decision. Northwest Justice wants to talk to her this morning. And I apologize for the short notice, but I had to do a lot of scrambling on this as well. I simply don't want to lose this person. I don't want to lose any of the felony defenders right now, period. Because if we let them go now, I think 6-8 months from now, if and when jury trials start happening again, things are going to pick up real fast. And then we're going to want somebody in there, and we're not going to have them. It's that simple. That's all I can offer this morning.
Questions?
Yes.
Questions, Commissioners?
There's a huge backlog of cases, trials, hearings coming. We're going to need people. I have off and on over the years said that I thought that the OPD, Office of Public Defense, is probably best structured with a mix of employees and contractors because those services are statutorily mandated. They're not optional. And if we don't have coverage for those cases, we find ourselves in a must-pay situation. We'll have to pay whatever anybody asks to get folks to come and do those trials. We don't have a choice, and it's not reimbursed by the state. And I think it's been a risk factor for the county. The cost of providing benefits for one employee is less than the cost of cutting or putting a door in the new assessor's office. A full year of benefits is less than the cost of that door repair. So I don't think that ought to be the obstacle. Whether or not others feel the same, I think it's a wise way to go. I don't think we should have an office that's fully staffed with employees. I think it's a mix, and it gives us some flexibility with the contracts to increase and decrease our staffing as the load requires.
I wish I could tell you that I thought things were going to get better. I met with the new head of Office of Public Defense from Olympia. They have some rather expansive ideas as to how things ought to be run that I don't agree with. And I had a good meeting with him, but I told him point blank, I said, look, you come from another side of the state and we don't think quite the way you do. Our values are a little bit different over here. We don't have the kind of money that you people seem to enjoy over there. He was surprised when I had turned down an offer of grant money from his office. And it was because, as you might expect, the grant money came with a lot of strings. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. To give up local control for the sake of that money, I think I can do it a lot cheaper than what they think we can do it for. But it's a constant battle here. And by virtue of picking the right people, doing what I think we have to do in this office, I want to protect my people and what they do from the people that they represent directly. But indirectly, when they do the job properly, they protect the county. I mean, each one of them carries about $1 million in coverage. And that's all fine and good until that defendant comes along. And that defendant will probably come along through the auspices of state OPD or the Northwest Justice Project. And they're going to say $1 million isn't enough. They're going to say the county screwed up because it chose the wrong person for the job. The person knew or should have known that they should have done something differently. And now the county's on the hook in terms of potential civil liability. And I'm conscious of that every day that I'm on the job. I don't agree with a lot of it, but I play the cards that are dealt the best I can. That's all I can do. So I think this is, as I've told Keith, this is a good offer right now. It's a good option for the county. It's the right option at the right time for the right reasons. And I would urge you to vote for it.
I'm in agreement with Mr. Ziegler, and I don't think that now is the time to let anybody escape our possibility of hiring them on, because we are facing a situation of being backlogged, and with the employment climate as it is, I think this is a wise choice to move forward, and I totally support you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of Resolution 2021-264 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Discussion. One question I have for Mr. Ziegler. With the Blake decision coming down, are a lot of these cases just going to be just alleviated, or are we going to have to try every one of those?
I think a lot of them are going to be summarily dealt with. They're not going to be that difficult. A lot of these cases will be just going back, eliminating the felony point conviction. The real rub's going to come, and it's already started, and I'm not going to get into that, is how are they going to compute the refunds for the fines and assessments? And we're talking millions of dollars in the aggregate. But I don't think the Supreme Court gave that a lot of thought when they came out with this latest decision. It's what the Germans call the zeitgeist. It's the new values that are in place right now, and we're all expected to run in tandem to them. I don't like that, but there's not a whole lot I can do at this juncture. I'm saying, from my standpoint as an administrator for this office, I think we can do it a lot less money. I think the prosecutor can do a lot of this unilaterally. We don't need to be involved in it because it'll inure to the benefit of the defendant. And until such time as they can establish that it's prejudicial, I'm dealing with one individual now that's in prison. He's been in front of us 3, 4, 5 times now. He simply refuses to accept any analysis that it doesn't agree with him and his mother. It is what it is. That's the exception.
Even the defendants that aren't challenging will still need to be represented in these hearings.
They may. It'll depend. I mean, a lot of them I think we can sidetrack. A lot of them are going to agree with what we say. I mean, they're going to look at it and say, look, all I can get out of this is you drop my criminal history score 1 point. I think the real rub is when they start to find out about the money.
Restitution.
And I'm sure the prison system's already, everybody knows about it.
So I'd just like to make a statement too. I'd like to thank you for not grabbing onto that grant and giving up our, I appreciate that. And I think that the county appreciates that. We want to stay in control, so thank you. So we have a motion and a second. If there's no other further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. With that, Keith, we're down to administration off of business.
Thanks, Larry. Yes, first item is just a brief discussion on kind of an update on the potential sale of Wilson House. We received some communication this week from the real estate representative of the hospital. They are indicating that they're not likely to be a bidder in an auction. They had hoped for basically providing a silent bid on the property, but state law requires us to put real estate, if we're going to sell it, into a public auction. So I'm not sure that they're interested yet in, they may submit a bid in the auction or they may not. The Treasurer's Office is working with local auction houses to offer a RFP that they could submit to market the property for us. I would note that that's not likely to happen before the end of the year, the completion of that process. So I'm going to be bringing an extension of the current tenant's lease before the board in the next couple of weeks to consider. And assuming we sell it, the property, then the buyer would have to take it subject to that lease extension, probably another 6-month lease extension, so that they have assurance that they've got a place to operate until the deal closes and a new owner is selected. So I wanted the board to be aware of that. Maybe I'll pause there and see if there's any questions about that before I move to my next item.
It would seem that a sale encumbered by an existing lease would only serve to reduce the sales value. Makes me wonder if that couldn't be mitigated in some way. By way of example, let's say there's a 1-year lease. If it could be arranged that upon closing, the current occupants under the lease could vacate within 4 months or 6 months or something. It just...
Yeah, I don't think we would do any longer than a 6-month lease extension at this time.
So potentially somebody, if we did this in a month, could be looking at a purchase encumbered by 5 months of lease time. Lease payments would convey to the new owner?
Yeah, assuming they close.
Because once there's a transfer of ownership, I don't know how we could claim those lease payments.
Right, exactly.
So if they would accrue to the new owners, that might be beneficial. That might mitigate some of the impact on the selling cost.
Seems to be a dog in the house.
I think so. It's in my pocket.
So Keith, question I have, has the renters at this time made any suggestion of monies that they'd be willing to pay for this building?
They've not stated an amount, no.
Okay, but we have to go to auction in order to...
Yeah, we'd have to make it publicly available. We could not just do
a sale to them.
Direct sale to them, correct.
Okay. All right, that's all the questions I have.
All right, thank you.
When does the current lease expire?
The end of the year, December 31st of this year. So
all right.
that's why we're looking for an extension to make sure that we don't have
I think 6 months would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay. The other item I share with some remorse that Carly Nave has submitted her resignation. She's received an offer for a different position. It significantly increases her professional opportunities and financial rewards, and so she is resigning effective the end of the year. So I want to take just a brief moment to thank her for her service and work for Franklin County, and she will sorely be missed. But wanted the board to be aware of that and asked for permission to immediately begin a search to find her replacement.
We have consensus on that?
Absolutely. We don't have a choice.
We'll do a vetting process. There will be several
Yeah,
candidates.
I may come back before the board with a request for possibility of going through a search firm. I don't know that that's necessary yet, but.
No, my question is, will we have, the commissioners have the ability to choose from 3 different candidates, or how are we going to do this?
Typically,
An interview process?
yeah, if you want to participate in that
Absolutely.
process, then we can make that possible.
Okay. Is that it, Keith?
Yes, that's all I have today. Thank you.
So we're back down to public comment. Is there any public comment? Anybody on the phone?
None on the phone.
I'm sure that you're aware of the unfortunate scene that unfolded this last week with the shelter that takes our animals off the street that are found to be abandoned, and the Humane Society taking over that. I think it's unfortunate that that happened, and thankful that the city was looking into it quickly, and not sure if the county provides funds into that or not, but I think it's something to certainly be aware of, and very thankful for all the people that immediately came to the aid and helped in that. I know that there shortly there were people providing meals to them and so forth, to the people that were going in there, and very unfortunate that that happened in our community.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, is there any other business for the good of the county?
I don't mean to call him out, but I see Matt Mahoney is here, so I just have some questions on the progress of the Clotis Highway project. I have a lot of constituents that are asking me when it's going to be finished, and it looks like it's about done, so hopefully good news.
Yeah, we're at the point now where effectively it is done. It's been striped. I believe it needs to be striped one more time. Usually after we put new pavement down, we stripe it twice. Hopefully you saw that I think it was last week I was out there and they were just finishing up the rumble strips off of the shoulder and taking care of that. I know that we got some guardrail left to go in at a couple locations. So this is what we would call probably at that point where we call it substantially complete, and it's really just a lot of cleanup at this point. But this point, hopefully we won't see any impacts to any continuous impacts to traffic. But yeah, I drove out there and I think we got lucky for how late we paved this year. But we kind of knew that it was a long job. It was a lot of reconstruction of a major portion of that road to bring it up to current standards. So yes, we're at that point. There's some stuff left to do. I can't speak to the fact. I believe that they were doing the approaches. I was in the office on Friday. We had an inspector out there. I think they were doing mailboxes and doing that on Friday. This week, I'm not sure exactly what's left. I believe there are some paving of approaches that need to be completed, and just really minor items at this point. But yeah, our office truly appreciates the patience of the residents out in that area. And I just say they were extremely patient because it was a mess out there at times, and we received very little phone calls from the residents and landowners. Maybe you all folks had to get them, but our office didn't get a lot. And there's some things that we learned from this, and as we move forward with other projects, we're continually trying to learn from, I don't want to say mistakes, because we put a lot of effort and a lot, as I told the board early on, a lot of cost for this project went into staging and making sure that it was open at all times, which was incredibly difficult based on, in some areas, the amount of cut and the amount of fill that was going in some of the locations on that road. But we've made note, we've learned from some of these areas, and as we move forward, we'll continue to implement some of those things that we learned to make it hopefully the least amount of impact. That's what we're looking for. Because in Franklin County, as you know, there is no good time from an agricultural standpoint for us to do construction and close roads. There's just not. It's a year-round process. There's always something going on, and then trying to put them out, it seems like everybody puts them out in the summer, and unfortunately that's when asphalt's available. You know, we're at that point now where asphalt plants are going to be shutting down and don't open up again until March, April. So it's trying to get that good balance of when we do have to go to construction, make sure that we're doing it in such a way that it provides the least amount of impact to our residents and our agricultural community. So I appreciate you passing on some of the phone calls you received and allowing us the opportunity to make improvements on the fly, for lack of a better term. So appreciate it. Hope that answered your question.
So Matt, before you leave, met with Port Pasco talking about the old Railroad Road, and I thought that whole road was probably going to go to all weather, but they informed me we were just going to go past just right where Darigold's at. And there's so much traffic on that road, and then when I drive one of our dump trucks, it makes me a little nervous, the narrowness of that road with these bigger trucks. I would strongly advise that we do that whole road to make that more, I know it's going to cost money, but I think it's going to be a safety issue with the amount of trucks they're going to put on there and the amount of trucks that are coming out of those spud cellars.
Yeah.
And the other traffic down to Agrid Northwest there.
Yeah.
It's not as busy as it once was, but there are just so many potato sellers, onion sellers, and the traffic on that road is all truck. I would like to see that whole thing done if it's possible.
That's in the planning, and especially what we provided to the board in our last 6-year transportation improvement program, the one for 2022. It includes I'd like to say the county has all of that, but I think if you drive out there, you can see a distinct difference between the city portion of it and where it ends and where the county begins.
Where does that end at?
It is south of the Darigold area, but you can drive it. I can't give you an exact milepost. It's not on but you can drive it and you will know. There's a huge difference. The county, like I said, I'm not calling anybody out, but the county portion is in
better shape,
way better shape than the city. But we're looking at doing the whole county portion of Railroad, dealing with that intersection at Vineyard and then all the way to the highway. And I think that will take care of some of the future plans, dealing with self-landing and all of that in the future to get that complete. So
thank you.
Yep, thank you.
With that, if there's nothing,
Commissioner, may I just interject one? I just got a text message that I want to note. Former Commissioner Bob Cook is in the hospital, very sick. It's not COVID, but it's some kidney issues. So the family has requested that we keep them in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, for that. All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned.